Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Ahmed Ismail. I'm a founding member of the Black Opportunity Fund, and I'm an employee of Wellington Management. And today I'm really excited to host and co-host really with the rest of the working group what will be the first ever gathering of Canada's Black VC ecosystem. This is a very exciting event for us. You being here really makes it exciting. We're going to have it be engaging, interactive. And before we do that, we're going to have a panel discussion. And let me just start by, in kicking off this event, highlight why we're really here in the first place. So as you all know, there's huge power in community and gathering and networking. And what we're really trying to do here is bring together Canada's Black VC ecosystem because it's growing. You all know that. Many of you have been in the space or newer into the space and are at different stages, if you will. But there's real value in networking with each other, getting to know what other funds and your friends and peers are up to. And that's what we hope this first event to be. And with your support, we can get to doing event number 2, 3, and 4. This couldn't have been done without the support of Black VC, which is a nonprofit in the United States that really does the exact same in their local market. And we've partnered with them to kick off this discussion, and we really have their support. So we want to thank them for that. And we're going to hear from one of their co-founders on our panel today very soon. In terms of our format of this event, we're going to start with a panel discussion. And of course, it will be recorded. We're then going to end that recording, jump right into breakout rooms, get to know each other a little bit. These will be intimate settings. We're going to split the room in 3. And we're really going to really just touch on some of the topics we hit in the panel. And we'll hear about those very soon. We're then going to close the event at 7:45. We're going to gather again in this big room and use that opportunity to share what we learned in the breakout rooms and tease out what some of our next steps could be. So with that, I want to pass it to my colleague on the working group, Abdel Ali.
Thank you, Ahmed. My name is Abdel Ali. I'm a member of the working group that brought this event together. I'm also a young member of the Canadian VC ecosystem and a soon-to-be entrepreneur, so be on the lookout for that. Shameless plug aside, I am honored to introduce our moderator for today, Liz Beracondave. Liz is the co-founder and managing partner of BKR Capital, the first institutionally backed Black-led VC fund in Canada. Liz is an innovative finance specialist who has worked with several international institutions, most notably the Jacobs Foundation, for whom she managed an EdTech investment strategy. Liz also mentors and supports highly promising and impactful startups in emerging markets. Liz began her career in the hedge fund industry in Montreal, and her interest in mixing attractive financial returns with long-term social impact is what inspired her to transition into the impact finance sector. She has experience across the investment spectrum, from fund of fund and VCs to being the transition CEO for a tech startup. Liz is a CFA charter holder, and she also holds a Master of Business Administration from the Shanghai Advanced Institute of Finance. That's where she wrote her thesis on impact investing. Liz also holds a trilingual BBA from HEC Montreal. Fun fact about Liz, she is fluent in French, English, Spanish, and has a conversational level in Mandarin. She is a firm believer in using the forces of capital markets as a basis for more inclusive wealth creation and sustainable poverty alleviation. She has many awards, so I'll just discuss 3 for today. She received the 2022 Top 25 Women of Influence Award. She also received the 40 Under 40 Award by the Black Women in Asset Management Organization. And finally, the 2021 Refinery 29 Powerhouse Award. Thank you, Liz, for moderating our event today. And with that, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you so much, Abdel. And thanks everyone for attending. I am super excited for this first Black VC event and gathering of the ecosystem here in Canada. And also to have this panel full of superstars that definitely do not need any introduction, but I'll still ask them to introduce themselves. We have Will Stiagen, we have Brian Duarte, and we have Frederick Gross, who will be able to share with us their experience today. I'll start with you, Wills, for an introduction, if you don't mind.
Sure. Thank you very much, Lee. Thank you, Ahmed, and thanks for everybody that's been involved in this in this initiative. Very, very pleased to be here. Very pleased to meet all of you. I know a lot of people on this call, so it's going to be fun to talk about myself very quickly. Will Steagen, I'm at CDPQ. I've been with the firm for 5 years. CDPQ, we're the second largest pension fund in Canada. We manage just north of 420 billion. And a significant portion of the investment is in technology. So we invest in multiple asset classes, including real estate, infrastructure, fixed income, and public markets, and of course, private equity. And within private equity, we have about $82 billion dedicated to technology. About 2 years ago, we launched a new fund. This is an initiative I was part of, a fund called Equity 25 to the Power of 3. It's a $250 million fund seeking to encourage companies to use diversity as a vector of growth and to support diverse-led companies. So it's the largest fund of this kind ever created in Canada. And since we launched the fund, we've made 3 investments, including a fund investment in BKR Capital, which is the fund that Lise is managing. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Awesome. Thank you, Wills. Frederick, do you want to go next?
Thank you, Lise. And thank you all for being here and for inviting me as the American coming in here to present a perspective. So I guess as a brief introduction to myself, my name is Frederick Gross. I'm one of the leads here at Wellington, leading our early stage venture practice, which is a $150 million fund focused on diverse at least diverse founders and diverse managers. So we have a small fund-to-fund component of the vehicle as well. And this is brand new. So this is something we've been working diligently here at the firm on over the last 12 months. Before that, I was a partner in an early stage B2B focused fund called Storm Ventures, where I spent just about 7 years investing and leading Series A's in companies. And then I'm one of the co-founders of BLCK VC in the United States, which I co-founded with Sydney Sykes. And that has been, an incredible opportunity to build alongside the community across 6 different cities in the US. And so I'm excited to pull off that experience set to help you all as you guys begin the journey of building out an ecosystem within the Canadian ecosystem. So with that, I'll hand it off to I guess, Brian.
Thanks, Frederick, and thanks, Lise. Brian Duarte. My background has been in the energy sector primarily. So the focus in the energy sector, but in the last 10 years, started going into more sustainability and clean tech. This background that you see behind me, that's one of the reasons why I got into that space. I'm from the Caribbean, and want to see beaches like this and preserved. And as we hit the climate challenges going into the future, it's going to be a big deal to be able to maintain it, and everyone needs to contribute to that. So for that aspect, I'm an entrepreneur. I've created a number of different businesses. I have businesses still in that space. But right now, I've got a venture fund, Black Tech Capital, focused on Black and underrepresented founders in the clean tech space. I wanted to give entrepreneurs like myself a chance, along with Lise and Wills and Frederick, diverse founders. We know they're underfounded. So wanted to be one of those people having to contribute to that, not just from a financial perspective, but also from an educational perspective. Want to give my experience, my background, building companies and working with those founders. So it's not to help them grow and help them succeed. And excited to be part of this panel tonight and contribute, what the journey has been for me so far and add to that. So leave it there. Mm-hmm.
And we're excited to have you too, Brian. We're excited to have the 3 of you. I can't wait for us to start this conversation. When we're talking about being a Black venture capitalist, we know the situation here in Canada, same as the US, and I would say pretty much all around the world, that from a representation perspective, it's not the greatest. And we can't talk about venture capital without talking about fundraising. Fundraising is hard for everyone, but fundraising while Black is another challenge. And it'd be great to hear a bit about the perspective of all the panelists about either your experience of what you've seen worked well in the ecosystem. I'll start with Brian, have an understanding of how has been your journey fundraising for Black Tech Capital.
So for me, the journey has been, the majority of the fundraising has been with high net worth individuals and discussions with institutions. So I'll start with the high net worth individuals. It's interesting when I speak to non-Black individuals, they're almost shocked to hear that Black founders do not get funding, right? So you'd think with all the media and everything going on, they would know that. So for me, it's been a lot of not only going out and trying to raise money, it's actually raising awareness and saying that this is the situation. So there's like a missing around that, of that understanding. So for me, that education usually sort of inspires people to do something. And then for myself, where it's also impact investing, we're doing that cross between the two. So it's looking, for me, it's been looking at investors that want to be out there, want to make a difference, that are aligned with the mission that we're trying to accomplish. And then I've also been talking with institutional investors, and that's been a longer story. I mean, it's a longer play, it's a longer discussion, but an interesting challenge, and been enjoying it so far. You know, I never would have thought I would have enjoyed fundraising, and I actually can say that I do.
That's
No, it's
nice.
not easy.
Well, it's good to enjoy fundraising because it's a process that takes time, so might as well have fun in the process. Maybe I'll go to you, Frederick, next. Not only have you been part of great institutions, but you've been also surrounded by a lot of Black VC firms in the US, and we know that sometimes we have to be creative around fundraising. So it'd be nice to have an understanding of what you've seen worked well or worked less well in your ecosystem.
Yeah, well, I think Brian sort of hit it on the nose, right? Which is, the reality is LPs, particularly here in the United States, they're on a spectrum in terms of their understanding of the underlying issues, right? In terms of understanding why does it matter to have diverse investors, and how does that relate to the way venture fundamentally operates, right? In terms of networks being the way we do our job, right? In terms of sourcing opportunities. And so I found that to be the case in terms of, am I convincing somebody that the problem even exists, or are we talking about solutions and how, the fund I'm, helping lead is solving those or attempting to solve those issues. And so I continue to find that to be the case. I'll say that, here in the States, we've seen a couple of interesting things happen, right? I think one has been sort of the mass engagement of corporates as becoming LPs, which, really historically haven't been as big of a player on the early stage sort of LP ecosystem. And on one hand, it's phenomenal, right? Because we're seeing so many more Black GPs sort of get their opportunity to do a fund, get out in market and start to invest. But what we haven't seen is something Brian, I think, was pointing out, which is like as much of the institutional segment coming in actively and aggressively yet, though many of them are trying to understand, right? Like how to proactively engage, how to think about emerging manager initiatives that can sort of provide opportunity for folks that look like us in the ecosystem. But at the end of the day, they're still on a journey trying to figure this out. And that's been my experience. And so, I've taken a slightly different approach with my current fund, where we've actually gone for the most part after institutions, which has kind of put us really into that experience set of seeing where these institutions are, how they're navigating it. One of the things that we've seen is that, those institutions that have, a mandate at some level around community, maybe that's because they're an insurer, that maybe that's because they're a financial institution and have a regulatory reason that they might want to invest in their ecosystems, that has been a thread and a part of the broader LP universe that has worked very well in terms of getting access and getting people to convert over, and wouldn't have been what I would have expected or predicted coming into this process. And then the last one that I'll mention that has been, I'm still sort of sussing out. So I'll be curious if other panelists or others in the room, in our breakout rooms, have different experiences here. But it's been sort of what the role will be of consultants as well in the ecosystem. And so, we've started to really engage and lean in with consultants here in the US. And for those who aren't aware, I mean, consultants are folks that obviously will work with a variety of limited partner organizations and then often come in to do the diligence or do some of the work and bring forward funds or managers they're excited about to their LPs. And we're seeing a lot more sort of, I guess, sophistication coming from the consultants in terms of creating opportunities and segmentation of more diverse managers to bring that to their LPs that are a little bit sort of hunting or looking for a different demographic set. And so, we haven't seen a lot of conversion per se here yet, but we've begun to engage, and we're hoping to see a lot more conversion over time, and as a way to efficiently engage with a broad segment of institutions over time, because many of those want to see 2 or 3 funds, and sort of watch you over time as well.
Thank you, Frederick, for sharing. And it'd be great to hear also from you, Wills, from an LP perspective, the fundraising piece. How has that been for you, watching the funds coming and pitch to you, and most of the challenges that you're seeing internally with diversity itself?
Yeah, and I think I have a different perspective, Liz, because with Equity 25 to the power of 3, we have about 15 to 20% of the 250 million that we want to use to invest in diverse-led funds. But we also have 1.5 billion that we invest in funds, in VC funds at CDPQ. And I think from our perspective as Black fund managers, we definitely see there's a lack of Black funds. There's definitely a lack of capital available to Black fund managers. But I have to tell you, there's a number of white fund managers that are not getting capital as well. It's very difficult to raise a first fund. And what I've noticed as far as, when we talk to first-time managers, Black managers that are raising funds, it's the same. It's very similar to the issues that the white fund managers are facing. But on top of it, I think the investors, the LPs, the institutions, they probably don't know our deal flow and market as well. So which brings another challenge. And basically, when you want to raise a fund, the first thing they're going to look at is, do you have a track record? And the track record is connected to giving them assurance that you're going to be able to generate return. And when we're looking at fund managers, the things we want to see is experience and investment. So you're able to invest in companies, find good deals, invest in them, and create successful exits. Do you have operating expertise? Because if you're going to support entrepreneurs, you need to have some type of operating expertise. And then the third one is governance. Is there governance in place to be able to really manage the fund properly, the audit, and et cetera, et cetera? So I think the challenge is to get to a level where we can build track records. And if I can give an example, when we invested in BKR, what we really like about the approach of Isaac and Liz is the fact that there is the experience as entrepreneurs and experience as fund managers. So I think, of course, it's difficult, but I would strongly encourage all of us to make sure that when we go in front of investors, specific institutional investors asking for capital, that we're able to show them the track record, we're able to show them our ability to generate deal flow and have successful exits. And just keep in mind that the investors, they're always asking themselves, okay, are they going to be able to find the next unicorn? And I think as we're building our ecosystem, as we're creating Black-led unicorns, everything should get easier. But at this stage, I'm not surprised to see that it's difficult. And I think it's really the fact that we're starting, but we need to make sure we have the credentials they're looking for.
Sometimes it's a bit of the chicken and egg issue, right?
Yeah.
You need experience, but yeah, you also need the first chance. I think that to maybe add from our perspective, because I'm hearing a lot about the issues that Black entrepreneurs have to raise funding, and that as a piece of education that has to be provided to the LPs. The way we're seeing it at BKR Capital is not so much in terms of even leveling the playing field, but as such a big missed opportunity, right? When you have such talent that is being underfunded, and potentially that can generate the same or outsized. It's basically a source of investment that nobody's looking at right now, and that is basically the next big thing. So that's how we've been presenting it, and that's really what we believe. We're only investing in Black-led technology companies, and we're looking forward to working with all of you guys in the ecosystem to basically assist to the creation of the next unicorns. Now that we're talking about entrepreneurs, let's talk about deal sourcing, which is the second most important thing in our world. We hear a lot about the pipeline issue, which we all know is a myth. One of the things that is really, really hard with our job is that we're in the no business. We're seeing a lot of companies and we have to be extremely disciplined in how we're investing. We have to say no a lot more times than we say yes. I'm wondering, in your experience, what has been a surprisingly interesting source of deals that have brought you, great performance in any of your funds, right? Or any creative story of how you found really interesting deals. Maybe I can start with you, Frederick.
Yeah, well, look, I feel like I have a little bit of maybe a hack with being one of the co-founders of BLCK VC, right? That has certainly supported and helped me through this. And I think, the message there, though, is really around, being willing to be proactive in the community, being willing to speak, because I remember when I was first entering venture, right? And I grew up in venture, from sort of, an analyst all the way up over the years, was, this inability early on to understand the risk to reward opportunity. I would think of, oh, I don't want to be tagged as the black guy doing the black thing, right? And as I, sort of matured a bit, I realized that was all, not that important at the end of the day, that the risk was mostly in my own head, and that it didn't really matter. At the end of the day, I wanted to have impact. I wanted to find great companies and just invest in winners. And so, today, I utilize community as one of the main ways to source, right? Whether that's building and catching up with, other Black investors, investors that aren't Black, but that understand sort of what I'm thinking about and looking at more broadly. And then I found actually, in the US, and I'm sure there are similar programs and organizations in Canada, I found a lot of the undergrad oriented scholarship programs like the Ron Brown Scholar Program or Gates Millennium and other communities like that to be phenomenally rich to find and sort of grab talent and track individuals. And then maybe the biggest surprise for me, though, as I say this, it'll probably be like obvious to everybody in the room, has been the value of large affinity groups within large corporates, right? And so engaging and doing events or getting to know, the Black communities with that, within Google, Twitter, Uber, you name it, right? And looking for those leaders and really trying to provide some value, trying to do small sessions within those organizations to just talk about venture. Or talk about angel investing, or invite people to, invest alongside me on deals that I'm doing, has been a phenomenal way to gain that exposure and find folks. And so, it's been this mixture of just thinking outside of the box, thinking about the communities that got me to, to a top school and got me through that school and then helped me set up. And it's, just a constant reminder that, the community's developed, right? We've got the talent, but what we don't always have is the interconnections across these silos, right? So much of our success, to get through into a great school and then through school and into great jobs has been blinders, be focused, be, the best of what you can. And our job as VCs is to start to break those blinders, right? And say, hey, you're phenomenal at this, but if I can, connect you with this individual, together, you guys can be a rock star team to go build. And so a lot of my work is trying to identify that talent, trying to identify individuals that are entrepreneurial and just don't, need almost permission to be able to do that jump or lead. And my job is to really give them that education so they de-risk the opportunity, so they know, what the process looks like to go found a great company.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Frederick. Would any of you, Brian or Wills, have something to share on this question?
Yeah, I would say I totally agree with Frederick about proactive in the community. This is what we have done since we launched our diversity fund. The other thing is we've spent a lot of time building the ecosystem. So I think we need a lot more Black-led VC funds to make sure that we create the funnel. And a lot of our activities are around putting together support for the entrepreneurs. So mentoring, networking, coaching. And I think as we're building the ecosystem, that should be really helpful to help us build deals. So I think for us, the challenge is because we're a growth investor, finding Black-led companies where we can write a good ticket, a good investment ticket, because our minimum investment is 5 million. So the challenge for us is getting the level of businesses we're looking for. But I think by supporting early stage funds that can create a quality funnel, that's gonna really be helpful to build the next unicorns.
I was going to build off of that. To me, yeah, community is going to be key. I find that when I'm out there talking, say in the clean tech space and all my networks there, if there is a Black founder in that space that's doing something, people tend to pass them towards me. So it just leads me to, there's an expectation out there that Black founders are only going to be supported or should be supported by Black VC funds. So, so my non-white or non-Black colleagues out there in the clean tech space, that they're passing those kinds of deals to me. So I see it through that. I also see it through a lot of accelerators, because I find a founder that's gone through some sort of accelerator has got some sort of rigor before they come out versus just sending an email in saying, could you look at this? They've gone through some rigor, they've proven themselves. So there's been no difficulty in finding those, but there's an expectation, I think is the surprise to me, that a Black founder is going to need a Black VC to support them. So, yeah, that was.
And Brian, just to add to what you just mentioned, I think I'd like to see us change two things. Number one is when someone is passing a Black-led business to one of us to look at and saying, this is better for a Black-led fund, sometimes it means that they don't think it's the quality deal, right? So I really would like to see that they're not passing on the deals, they're looking at them as well as quality deals. And number two, I'd like to see within the Black community, I'd like to see us build a complete ecosystem of financing where, for example, if an early stage a seed company come to see me, because they're too early for me, I can refer them to Lise or you, right? And if we do that the right way, we should be able to have an ecosystem where the deals are always between us, right? And not in a sense that we keep them for ourselves, in a sense where we know that what's coming in the pipeline at all times. For example, if there's quality seed companies that are being supported by any one of us, it means that a year or two from now, I'm going to be able to write a check. And one of our objectives at CDPQ, and I've been working on this for about 2 years with Barbara, who's on the call as well, is making sure we build this equality ecosystem. We spend a lot of time, for example, with Future Connor, with Face, a lot of time with Lise, and we want to make sure we're able to do that, because this is exactly the recipe we've witnessed from the white folks that are managing funds. That's how they were able to build a successful ecosystem to support entrepreneurs and build quality businesses.
And I agree with what you're saying, Wells. To clarify, I'm not talking from other fund managers. So it's not like this fund manager saw it and they said, okay, this deal is for you. This would just be people in my networks in the clean tech space. So not from a venture, but I fully agree with, I want to make sure I can grow my companies to a size that now I can pass it on to CDBQ. But yeah, I've shared some stuff with Melissa Allen that's on this call. I've passed some companies to her. I've passed some to Lise as well. So to look at. So definitely agree with sharing it in the ecosystem among ourselves.
But I've heard the comment from Black entrepreneurs. They were insulted because they knocked on the door of white VCs and they were told you should go see a Black VC, and they were insulted, and they were insulted for the right reason. And I'm hoping we can change that.
And Wills, maybe building off that a little bit, one of the things I try to be fairly purposeful about, right? Particularly in my network of venture, other VCs, is like, I'm a B2B investor and I start there. I say, I want to see great B2B deals, full stop. Now, when they're led by diverse individuals and Black, that's great. That's my filter. But I want to see all great B2B deals, period. And then invite others in the community, because I've got plenty. The vast majority of Black venture investors in the United States do not focus on investing only in Black founders, right? They're just early stage investors holistically. And my goal is just to see great deals and then hand them off to the person that I might know in my network that is the best partner for them. If it's a good fit for me, that's phenomenal. But I try to really anchor on just seeing the greatest deals, full stop. And then my filter decides, is this a deal for me or not? The network and ecosystem, it's not on them necessarily to have to know, okay, Fred's exact sort of criteria are X, Y, Z. But really for me to do that work and then make sure that when I meet that founder, that I can provide value in that interaction every single time, right? And I'm very sort of diligent about making sure I've provided value in every interaction that I have with a founder, Black or not. And obviously the Black ones and the Latino ones and the women-led companies are the ones that I'm going to sort of, potentially be able to double click into. But I think it is really important that, we are taking this sort of broader vantage point of just seeing great deals, period. Right. And then as a community, just trying to invest in as many great deals as we can. And then certainly, the hope is that that is also, the diverse ecosystem kind of growing alongside that as well.
Can I make a last comment, Lise, on this topic? I think you're right, Fred, but one of the big challenges I think we have in Canada versus the US for Black-led companies is the fact that the pipeline is not big enough. We just don't see enough quality deals. I mean, and from the conversation I had with Face and Fitopreneur and many others, there's still a high percentage of companies that are family type businesses, right? Nothing to do with VC, right? So when you take them out, the pool of businesses to invest in is very small. And on top of it, some companies are not just ready for institutional capital because they don't have the setup, they don't have the right things we're looking for. So I think we need to find a way to fuel the ecosystem, to encourage more Black entrepreneurs to start companies and do whatever we can, because at this time the pipeline is, from my perspective, from what I've been looking at the past 2 years, it's just too small.
I think that's probably the case in the later stages, but I mean, for me, I'm not having any difficulty finding it at the earlier stages. And I think, but I agree with you, like right now, I work a lot with the Black Founders Network at the University of Toronto that just launched, and they're focused on developing Black entrepreneurs. Sheridan College, I'm working with them. They're developing a program and developing Black entrepreneurs specifically in clean tech. So it's coming slowly. So, for myself, because I'm at that very early stage versus where CDBQ is at, I think we're starting to see it come up. So yeah, but it'll probably take a while before it gets to you.
But Brian, quality is still an issue. I'm sure if you ask Lise, out of all the deals she looked at, how many she's doing, like right now, I'm doing probably 1% of what I look at as far as deal flow.
Yep. But to be a bit of a devil's advocate, I think that's at least at the VC level, that's the 1 to 4% is around the percentage usually. Yep. But when we find those deals, they're amazing, right? Yep. So we're speaking to companies where the founders are just so great. And that's basically, I guess, our job to sort of dig deeper and to find those gems in the community. So I'm still quite excited about the space, but it's true that, and it's fine for us, everything is extremely early stage. Once we're looking for companies that have reached a certain level, then it's really, really hard to find them, having a certain, like having 500K plus of, MRR, it's extremely difficult to find a lot of them, which is not necessarily that big, right, when you think of it. But it's been a very interesting conversation because it's also something that's in our mind a lot. At BKR, we focus on Black founders because we want to find the best, but we don't want this to be an excuse for people to stop looking at diversity and sort of say, well, oh, here, there's a Black fund, there's a fund that's focusing on Black founders, go and look at them. And we don't want to be perceived as well, by entrepreneurs as being, the last resource. Well, no white VCs want us, so let's go and speak to a Black VC. We believe in excellence. We'll only invest in the best companies that we see. And we just really hope that the people in the community understand that this is an association that they should be proud of, whether it's, with us, with Black Tech Capital, with, the other funds that exist that are starting. It's about making sure that we're maintaining this quality so that people are still proud of having that support from all of us. We have had an amazing discussion. Maybe I'll ask a small question before we turn to the Q&A. The landscape right now has been a bit crazy. The market has changed quite a bit in the past few months. And I'd be extremely curious to have an understanding of how that has impacted either your fundraising activities, your deal sourcing, hiring within your portfolio companies. If you could share a bit, what was the impact on your end and how you're seeing the near future, even as it comes to the Black community generally. I'll start with you, Wills.
From our perspective, definitely we saw a significant drop in valuation. So from a portfolio company perspective, we're telling our companies to manage cash because this could be a headwind that's gonna stick for maybe 6 to 12 months. So the companies that are raising capital right now, it's a tough situation. So we're encouraging them to do it sooner than later. But at the same time, if they have enough capital, they don't need to raise for the next 6 to 12 months. That's probably the best strategy because we don't really know where the market is going, and the public market valuation have come down so much that it's more attractive right now to buy a discounted public company versus investing in private. So valuation has been an issue. As far as deal flow, we're seeing a lot more deals now. It seems that a lot of companies are raising their hand they're trying to raise, and we're more selective. So I think it's getting a bit more tougher and tougher for businesses to be able to raise. And what we see as well is profits. Profits are really the highest priority right now. So companies are strongly encouraged to generate profit because that's recurring revenues and profits. This is what investors are looking at primarily because of all the uncertainty in the markets.
Agreed. We're back to the fundamentals.
Yeah, but I would add though, Liz, it's a great opportunity for tech companies because a lot of the big tech companies, they've fired a lot of people, and we are in a labor shortage. So for private companies that are looking for skilled labor, which is a critical component for most of the VC businesses, it's a great time to find great skills, and probably the compensation package will be more in line with what makes sense than what it was 3 months ago.
Yeah, I would agree exactly with that. That has been one of the big things we've told our companies, which is now is the time to go hire rock stars, that exist out there. Not to say that it wasn't before, but your ability to close these individuals, has only grown, right? As Will said, right? I mean, we've seen the valuation ecosystem sort of get a little softer, right? And that, fundamentally changes things if you're working at a late stage company for a lot of executives who might want to see more upside opportunity. And so now's a great time to come into early stage companies and sort of take on a new role. And so we've certainly thought about that. And to enable that, we've thought and supported and told companies do top offs, raise a little bit more capital, extend that runway, because, things are changing and you need the time if you can get it take the time you can have to have the capital to just keep growing, because the reality is unit economics matter a lot more. The revenue you're going to hit, the more you can have, the better you're going to be positioned to raise at a better valuation moving forward. And we're just going to leave those times that last kind of 2 years that were just in many ways just all over the map in terms of just how we were pricing and looking at opportunities in the broader market. Now I will say though, to maybe play maybe a little bit of the other side, very specifically though, with like Black-led companies, the reality though is it's not like most of those founders were seeing wildly inflated valuations either, right? So while on one hand things are getting back to being a little bit more rational in terms of multiples, it's not that big of a shift for a lot of the founders that I'm seeing, right? And many of them have been building businesses that had to be more anchored on unit economics already. So I actually think this is a really interesting setup for diverse founders to be able to raise, to stand out from the pack of a lot of these high price sort of rounds that have been happening and be able to showcase the real evidence in their businesses. Now, we do need to make sure they're still able to tell the big story, right? That gets a lot of venture investors excited long-term, but that certainly has been the case. And then the other part of your question, Lise, was around sort of fundraising for us as a fund. I think the big question that I'm hearing GPs talk about right now is the denominator effect going to kick in, right? Are LPs going to start to pull back because, they've gotten overweighted as the broader macro sort of economic situations played out? The good news here is we haven't seen it translate into anything yet. I think most LPs are still seeing, that private equity and venture is an important place to have exposure and that it's done well for them. But I'm still nervous around whether that will play out, in the next 6 months to a year from now. And in venture, I mean, that can have a pretty, big effect to the ecosystem in terms of just slowing things down if it plays out. But it doesn't seem like we're seeing it yet, which is good.
And echoing what you were saying, Frederick, I think you're right with diverse and Black founders. The valuations weren't crazy. I mean, I've a couple of my companies right now that we're looking at, they're hearing investors saying they're actually investor friendly in terms of their valuation. So it hasn't been a big change for them in what they need to do, but they are further along. Typically at the pre-seed stage where we're doing, the technology readiness is much lower for, say, a non-diverse founder. So they've already taken it, they're into generating revenue beyond the prototyping stage where you would typically expect that very early. So it's a very great opportunity for them. And people are being cautious. So again, the same messages that you and Wills are putting out there, telling them to, preserve cash where they can, focus on the revenue growth, focus on building up their customers. Again, the fundamentals, as you said, Lise, is all the things we're doing. Mm-hmm.
And something that plays in our favor or in favor of our founders is that there is this degree of resilience and frugality that has always been with how they have operated, which also we hope will make them win in the market where there's probably less funding available generally. It was amazing to have you all in this panel today. We went a little bit over time, so I hope that Ahmed, you're not too mad at me, but it was such a great conversation. Thank you all. I'll hand you back the mic.
That's it. I really can't be with such a stellar moderator from yourself and everyone else here on the panel. I see a very active chat. So why don't we spend the next 10 minutes getting a couple questions for our panelists from those. If you have one, just unmute and let's do that. And then we'll end the recorded portion, jump right into the breakouts for some more discussion. But if someone has a question, just unmute and ask it of our speakers.
I'll kick us off. Hi, everyone. I'm Kiana Meeks with Black Tech Capital. My partner over there, Brian. Great answers. Killed it. My question was about tech talent. What role do you see Black VCs, not just in Canada, but kind of larger in the worldwide ecosystem, playing in developing Black tech talent and then funneling those rock stars to the companies that we're investing in?
Is your question around building tech talent to become VC investors or to become entrepreneurs?
To become entrepreneurs and like A+ operators.
Yeah, and I think it's critical for the Black community to build a successful ecosystem where we can, from the university stage, we can encourage Black students to become entrepreneurs. And for us to be able to do that, they need to make sure that there's going to be capital available, and we need to provide the network for them as well, and the mentoring and the coaching. I mean, if I compare it to the non-Black universe, how it works. I mean, you've got from early stage, from students, you've got possibility for them to do internships with companies, to get involved in any competitions, to get involved with incubators, with accelerators. And then when they're ready to jump and find a job, they have a network for people to get them exposed to what an entrepreneur is all about. And when they're ready to have their business, they want to raise capital again, they have a network, they can go knock on doors. So we need to build that. I don't think we have that at this stage, but I think to me, that's the priority. If we're able to do that, we're going to increase the number of Black entrepreneurs.
So I'm also kind of curious about your opinion on, because I see college as playing less and less of a role in the future. So wondering about your thoughts on that from, straight from secondary education or primary education to entrepreneurship.
Unfortunately, I'm really biased about that because I think information is really available. I think the world is moving so fast that you need to be able to adapt quickly. And I think when you have knowledge, that it's really helpful. I mean, a lot of the things we do, I mean, we've heard in the past of successful entrepreneurs, guys that quit school earlier on and they started their business, but it's a tough road. I mean, if you're able to educate yourself and then move into entrepreneurship, and as you're educating yourself, you're learning on how to think, you're meeting people that can become the next CEO that can become the CFO of your company. So to me, education is a priority, and I believe for us it's the right way to go. And we're always compared with others, right? When it's time to hire someone, when it's time to find someone that can become an entrepreneur, they're always comparing us to the others. So the more credentials you have, the better it will be, I believe, because it's a tough road when you decide to become an entrepreneur.
It's definitely a tough road. I definitely agree with that. So, you know, there are maybe like two core ways that I would respond to that question originally. The first is, I think, you know, one of the things I think a lot about and I try to proactively do is create opportunities around storytelling and changing the symbols, right? And elevating examples of Black founders out there, right? Because I think a big part of, you know, what I think about is how do we make sure that the culture makes it cool to be a founder, and that we tell those stories appropriately on how they got there, how the resiliency that they needed to have to get to that. So whether that's stories of Tope, the CEO of Calendly, and how he sort of built, or, you know, talking about, you know, the CEO of Rocket Lawyer, you know, and everything that he has done and how he navigated to build his company, right? And so there are, you know, still a huge opportunity set around just elevating within the community these examples. And then the second one is really around something we all hear constantly, right? Like these mafias that exist, right? The PayPal mafia, you know, you insert it. And so I proactively think a lot about, like, how do we create our own Black mafia, right? In terms of that knowledge ecosystem. And on this operator piece, sort of my answer or attempt at building in that has been through a program Black VC runs called the Black Venture Institute, where we take 100 Black operators a year and try to give them a fundamental understanding of how venture operates, why it's something they should care about, how to become an LP in a fund. And you would think, right, the opportunity there is really around educating those individuals so that they can make money. But that isn't actually the point. The point of this program is really going after senior people in big tech, because we know that they're the leaders that, you know, the young folks coming right out of college are looking up to, because they're like, I want to be that person. And we want to make sure those leaders understand and make it acceptable and okay to leave companies and start a company, and understand how they and what role they are going to have to play in terms of supporting that journey, right? And so I think a lot about, you know, this question of, you know, if I'm a software engineer graduating from Ohio State, as an example, it is the best opportunity in some ways to go work for Google or a large, big company, but that's not going to be where you want to be forever, probably. And how do we make sure we make it easy for them to have the networks they need to get to all of us in this room, right? Because it's our job to help them on that journey from a financial perspective, and hopefully from a network perspective, to make sure, you know, they have the tools and the people around them to answer the question, because this is hard. I mean, building companies is hard. Our job is hard too, as investors, and what we have to do, but it's a lot easier than what the founders have to do. And so, you know, I think a lot about, you know, that mafia build that we can do and how we can support that build up.
Thank you very much for that question. Maybe let's take one more from the group.
If nobody wants to ask a question, I might ask one. I want to Frederick, because right now we are at the beginning of creating a community of, you know, Black VCs or everybody in the ecosystem here in Canada. It'd be great to have an understanding of, you know, lessons learned on your end from all the work that you've done in the US. What should we look out for in terms of mistakes to avoid, or how can we already start with a strong footing in our initiatives?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, what this is right here, I mean, this is step one, right? Which is, you know, coming together and coming at it with, you know, an intent to listen, right? Versus just pushing an agenda for anybody, right? And every chapter we've built in the United States, you know, has had to go through that. I think, you know, one of the core tenets, you know, that I think you will all need to think a lot about and make sure exists is to make sure this doesn't become a transactional community or transactional relationships. You know, and there is that tendency to want to jump to deal flow, right? And start sharing. And I think that is great to anchor or to bring into the community, but it cannot be the raison d'etre of the community, right? And being here together. And I think, you know, every ecosystem that has anchored originally on deals or just sort of getting something, they've struggled in their early onset of coming together. And so, I think, that has been a key learning. I think the second one is really thinking about, how to create momentum, which is to say, how do we make sure this isn't just a one and done, right? How do we think about, breaking up the big problem, which is, we've all talked about, right? The lack of access, the lack of, capital coming into our communities. How do we start to take that big problem and break it into smaller pieces and have discussions, and then invite other people and invite folks outside of the Black community in? Because I think one of the key learnings has always been that if you try to create a Black VC chapter community isolated from, the broader venture ecosystem, it just can't work. We're not big enough as a community today where we can be an island and be successful, right? And so we are part of a broader community network. And so we have to be proactive in terms of inviting and bringing in allies. But that isn't to say we can't have Black spaces, right? And know when it's appropriate or not appropriate to have those stakeholders in. But it has always been very important to know who those individuals are and to make sure they're along the journey alongside the community development as well. Because again, we're trying to change a culture, not just, just get capital and do our own thing at the end of the day. And so, those have all been sort of keys, I think, for a lot of our chapter development over the last few, I guess, 7 years now across the US.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lise, for moderating, Frederick, Wills, and Brian, for your time here with us on the panel today. As I said, this is just the beginning, right, of a community that we hope to build. And for now, I'll end off our panel and we'll just sit tight. So let's end that recording, Naima, and we'll